Everyone at Eastline Aviation knew the rule. If a plane couldn't be fixed in 2 hours, it was to be scrapped. No exceptions, no second chances, and nobody questioned Mr. Carlton, the iron-fisted boss who built his fortune on efficiency and fear. But on a gray, windswept afternoon, something happened that would make the entire hangar remember that day for the rest of their lives. Lena Carter wasn't anyone special, or at least that's what she told herself. A quiet, soft-spoken woman from a small town, Lena worked as a maintenance assistant, mostly cleaning tools and keeping inventory. She wasn't an engineer. She wasn't a pilot. In fact, most people didn't even know her name. And that suited her just fine. She liked her world quiet, orderly, and predictable. But fate doesn't ask for permission before it rewrites your story. That afternoon, a high-stakes client arrived with a rare vintage aircraft, an old warplane rumored to be worth millions. The client was a dignitary, and if Eastline Aviation could get the plane airborne in time for a major event, the company would secure a contract that could make or break their entire year. The problem? The aircraft was a wreck. Its systems were so ancient and broken that even the most seasoned mechanics threw up their hands. "It's impossible," one of them muttered. Another shrugged. Too many unknowns, too many missing parts. But Mr. Carlton didn't want excuses. Red-faced and storming through the hangar, he shouted at his team, "Someone fix this or don't bother coming back tomorrow." The room fell silent. No one moved. No one wanted to be the one to fail, and then in the far corner of the hangar, his sharp gaze landed on Lena, a woman so quiet that her presence was almost ghost-like. He pointed at her, his voice like a whip crack. "You, Carter, get over here." Lena froze. The eyes of every mechanic, technician, and clerk followed her as she stepped forward, her hands trembling. She'd never been trusted with anything, beyond tool checklists and cleaning oil spills, and now she was being asked to fix an impossible plane. "In 30 minutes. I'm not a mechanic, sir," she stammered. "Either you fix it," Carlton growled, "or you're done here." Understand, there was no room for argument, no room for escape. And as the hangar clock ticked down, Lena felt her stomach knot and her chest tighten. But beneath the fear, a spark of something old and buried stirred. You see, Lena wasn't just a simple woman. She was the daughter of a mechanic. Her father, a quiet, gentle man named Thomas Carter, had once been one of the finest aircraft restorers in the country. She'd spent countless evenings by his side in their old garage, watching him tinker with dusty relics of the sky. She could still remember the way his hands moved, the sound of old manuals rustling, and his voice telling her, "Listen to the machine, Lena. It'll tell you what it needs." That memory crashed into her like a wave. Taking a deep, unsteady breath, Lena approached the plane. Its rusted skin, frayed wires, and lifeless cockpit looked like the aftermath of a long-forgotten war. But as her fingers brushed over the metal, something incredible happened. The fear didn't vanish, but it softened. And that old instinct she'd buried under years of silence began to guide her. She started small, tracing the wiring, listening to the way the components clicked and hummed under her touch. The mechanics scoffed from a distance, one muttering, "She's going to make it worse." But Lena wasn't listening. She was listening to the plane. In her mind, she could almost hear her father's voice guiding her hands. She rerouted a pressure valve using a part from a grounded helicopter. She cleaned out the fuel line with a strip of wire and a piece of cloth. She used a makeshift switch from a broken panel in the corner of the hangar. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't perfect. But it was something. 20 minutes in, sweat clung to her brow, and her hands were stained with grease. Carlton watched like a hawk, arms crossed, the threat of failure heavy in the air. 5 minutes, he barked. Lena climbed into the cockpit, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear herself think. The instrument panel flickered, half dead. She adjusted a lever, crossed 2 loose wires, and closed her eyes for a moment. "Come on," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Fly for me." She turned the ignition for a breathless second. Nothing. Then a sputter. Then a roar. The old warplane's engine coughed, grumbled, and then came alive with a sound like thunder rolling across the sky. The propeller spun in a blur. The mechanic's jaws dropped. Carlton's scowl melted into disbelief. The plane wasn't just alive, it was ready. "Get it on the runway," Carlton shouted. Lena guided the trembling machine onto the tarmac, the wind catching its wings like they'd been waiting years for this moment. The dignitary arrived just in time to watch the vintage craft lift off, its silhouette carving a graceful line against the afternoon sky. When the plane soared, so did something in Lena's chest. Back in the hangar, Carlton approached her, his face unreadable. For a moment, Lena braced herself for anger, for some cruel remark. But instead, the impossible happened. "Well done, Carter," he said, voice gruff. "Didn't know you had it in you." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, Lena Carter knew she was more than a name on a checklist, more than a quiet face in the crowd. She was her father's daughter. A woman of instinct, courage, and quiet, relentless skill. The hangar never looked at her the same way again. From that day forward, she wasn't just the assistant. She was Lena, the one who made the impossible plane soar. And for anyone out there, doubting themselves, lost in the shadows, this is your reminder. Sometimes life hands you an impossible plane, and sometimes you're the only one who can make it fly.